All right, since we do have quorum and it is 6 o'clock, we'll go ahead and get started with our meeting. We can start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk Domingo, if you take roll call for us, please.
Councilmember Williams, Reed, Jackson,
Here.
Lawler, Davis, Wright, and Mayor Snyder.
Here. All right, so we are here to discuss and follow up with our city tour that we took a few weeks ago, bringing in areas that we would like to address in each of our precincts and citywide. So I will go ahead and either turn this over to Director Arnold.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just enough for a quorum, so you're sticking with me tonight. So, based on our first follow-up from this, we had some direction. We were interested in learning more about a vacant property registration ordinance. I have that in front of you that Jason Francisco from the city of Battle Creek sent over to the city manager and I this morning. And I want to talk about that a second, but I did, since our van tour, get an opportunity to take Councilmember French out one-on-one. And so if he had any immediate follow-ups, I figured before I dive in, I just wanted to make sure. All right. Any questions right off the bat? You just want me to, I've got a list of sections that I want to call to your attention that I think will show you the value of the ordinance here. And I figured we'll just run through those. And I would say take all of this as very preliminary. We've not done much more than a quick read through this. If we are interested in moving forward on this, either like a committee like we did with rental certification, or just if that's the instruction to move forward, get us an ordinance like this, then we will we'll meet with Battle Creek a lot more, talk with them about how this works, what the problems are, and so on. But other than that, number one.
Wait, just 1 second before we get started, and then we also want to turn it over to you all, because I thought the basis of this, as we discussed at the last study session, that you all would go back with areas within your precinct, bring them back, and then we would prioritize on making sure that those get addressed. So I want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to provide that information as well. I know Councilmember Williams said he could not be here, but he did send over his areas that he would like included in tonight's discussion. I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. So real quick, you've got two documents in front of you from me, a vacant or abandoned structure notice with the Battle Creek seal up there, and then chapter 1456 vacant or abandoned structures. That's the ordinance. We'll get to the notice in a second. Start with the ordinance findings there. I just want to call out to your attention, you don't have to read that whole first paragraph, but they include that whole first paragraph of why they're adopting the ordinance on the notice related to that ordinance. Definitions, we don't need to spend too much time there, but I think call your attention to E, vacant or abandoned structure means any building which has been used or was intended for use as a residential dwelling or commercial structure in whole or in part, including an accessory building which has become vacant or abandoned for a period of at least 60 consecutive days for any residential structures and 180 consecutive days for commercial structures. So residential dwellings or commercial structures that have been vacant for an extended period of time, right? So we're not talking about we'll accidentally get someone who's been out of town for a month on this list. It's 60 days for residential. And then there's some further definitions, 1, 2, 3, and 4 there, open to trespass, fire damage, loitering or vagrancy. I know this from previous discussions and from the tour, there are a few specific sites where that happens more often. And so just by being a site for loitering and vagrancy, if it doesn't, we have a broad net on what vacant or abandoned means. It's really the intent of that. So let's go to the second page, 1456.03 registration. want you to look at the first few bullet points there, B 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's just contact information. Sorry, second page, registration. B. The first 6 sections of B there, that's just like contact information, how we get a hold of people. The interesting parts are 7, 8, and 9. When they register these vacant buildings, as we identify them, if we adopt an ordinance like this, they have to include in that registration the reason for the vacancy of the property, the estimated length of time the property is expected to remain vacant, and plans, if any, for restoration, reuse, or removal with an accompanying timeline and work schedule. I love the sound of that. We have a lot of buildings in this town. I'm sure you are all thinking of the specific ones, you know, that have been vacant for years. So being able to have some accountability to those property owners, and have them self-certify to us what their intentions are with that building. I haven't, again, talked to Battle Creek yet to see where they go from there. I'm assuming there's enforcement, I'm assuming there's guidelines, but we have so many properties in this town that sit vacant. We never hear from the owners. We write them up for grass, we write them up for boarding up an unsecure structure if it gets broken into or if it gets damaged by the weather. And well, the one right across from you is a great example. We would have loved in writing from the owners of that property years ago what their intentions were if they weren't going to fix it up. Yeah.
You know. What their intention is and allowing them to pay $40, fee for something like it. I was coming down the street past that restaurant up there yesterday. That's the Chinese, used to be a Chinese restaurant. There's 4 guys sitting there. And there's junk all around. I passed by there today and there's a guy walking by, eating, throwing his stuff down on the ground and continuing to walk. You know, and it seems, I don't know if they're homeless or what they are, it's hanging out around. But you go by there and it is just as junky and nasty as it can be. Now, that building has been vacant for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And to just have them paying a monitoring fee or whatever does not make sense. Who makes the law that says if you don't take care of something, it can be done with it? Somebody in this world has got to have some kind of law about that, whether it's the state, the national, or something. Because otherwise, people are allowed to just have, just like those house across the street, make junkyards that cause your city to look a mess and your property to be because what is, I don't know who makes those laws.
Well, there are provisions in the International Property Maintenance Code, which we do have adopted, that allow my office, code enforcement, to make determinations on structures that they're not worth the cost of rehabilitation, that they're dangerous or unsafe, and that the owners need to take action. Sometimes that action is demolition. I believe we have some accessory structures that were noticed in the last couple of weeks here that are unsafe. They would fit this definition, though we're not using this definition, of course.
So what when they don't do anything, they just continue? And you continue to send them letters and you continue to give them a call and they continue to let them sit with them.
So to a certain extent, we can't just look at a property and say, you've not used it, it looks bad, it's not in good repair, and we determine that it's not worth the cost to rehabilitate it. That still isn't enough always to order a demolition. You know, we are dealing with people's assets, right? So when we
People hanging out in there. What you're doing there, just making the city look better. Now, does that go to the state? Does the state do anything?
Well, it's really more of an ongoing process with us, right? So when a property isn't fit for occupancy, we condemn it and we restrict access. And if they want access back to that property, they have to do that in an ordered fashion, whether it's we're going to pull permits, here's our scope of work, here's what we intend to do, or if it's we're going to demo it, we don't want to continue to have this liability. It really depends, but it gets into kind of quite sensitive territory when we're making determinations about what we can order other people to do in terms of destroying a structure, removing a structure.
Make the one across.
Well, right, and I, Mhm.
There is so much that I'm seeing that's dangerous. Not just hazardous, dangerous. That's going on that eventually something. Has got to be done about it. If it can't be done here, it needs to be whoever you have to go to. Something needs to be done. I'm to the point now, from going somewhere, seeing something about it, and that's across the street from me. My granddaughter got ran from on that side of the street playing with a puppy next door by a groundhog back over to my house. The groundhog just started running at it, scared that thing got running. This groundhog, when he stands up, he's about this tall. When he's down on his feet, he's about this tall. I looked out there the other day and there's 4 of them. And there's holes, the guys that come from the city that cut the grass over there because the grass is so high. They were talking about it. It's in about 20 holes over here. Groundhogs, raccoons, and skunks. Because nobody's there taking care of that house. I've had it. If Albion can't do something, then more on the lands, see what they can do. Because something needs to be done about the house. And the one right down from me, the Bernie's house is getting to be the same way. The guys right there cutting the grass, and you can see the groundhog coming out from under the steps in the back. And when they get around there cutting, then they go back down under the steps in the back. I shouldn't have to be bothered with that.
And I think the proposed ordinance that we're talking about tonight is one way to start to address that. But then Attorney Harkness, can you weigh in on how the time? It's a timely process. It does not happen quick to. Well, I don't want to use the word force, but to require property owners to do something with their properties. How long does it take to actually get through the courts? Because I remember when Director Tracy was here and he would mention it would take sometimes years before we would issue citation after citation, go in and debate, but it's a lengthy process to finally get it through the courts to take firm action. Can you weigh in on that process, please?
It depends on which way the city goes. I mean, sometimes the city, has a minor issue on the property and they issue a civil infraction to an owner, just by way of example, say like maybe just some junk in the yard or something like that. And, sometimes when the citation gets issued, they've got 10 days to respond to it. And then if they don't respond, a judgment enters and then we can take action 21 days after that. If they contest it though, it can go on for a while. It's not uncommon for a case like that to just for a simple civil infraction to linger for several months. And then once we finally get a hearing and get it resolved, whether by a judgment or consent, or we have to allow another 21 days before we can enforce the judgment. For the more severe properties, what we've done in the past is we've filed public nuisance lawsuits against the property owners, basically having them declared a danger to the health, safety, and welfare of the public. For all the ones that we filed, we always get a judgment. The problem has always been a lot of times you have these properties that are owned by these shell LLC companies. I mean, and so the only asset held by the LLC is usually the property. And so then the problem becomes one of enforcement. It's, if the LLC doesn't have any assets or any money, and they're a separate entity from the members of the LLC, it's like trying to get blood out of a stone. And so then we're kind of in a no-win situation because the city doesn't want to go out of the money or out of pocket to demo the property because it's, the thing Ian will agree, demolition of a property is probably one of the most expensive propositions there is. Not to mention, once you get into the demolition, if you identify environmental issues like asbestos or other contaminants, it gets exponentially more expensive. So that's what we've run into a lot. I mean, a great example of that was Dalrymple School. I mean, that was held by an LLC. So was, what was that other school? I think it was Ann Street School?
Austin on Clinton.
Austin School.
Austin School, excuse me. Yeah, that one was held by an LLC and I mean, and that's all that was in the LLC. So, I mean, fortunately, there, you know, every once in a while we'll get one like the one over on Chestnut Street where the LLC is actually held by another parent LLC and we can go after both. And when one of them has assets, it's actually got some teeth. But I mean, in that particular case, I mean, it took the better part of a year just to get a judgment. Because there's a process and a lot of these companies that buy these kind of rundown properties are usually not in Michigan. In the case of the Chestnut Street School, that's owned by a company down in Florida. And so we had to trace that to figure out who actually owned the LLC because there was a shell LLC that eventually got transferred to a different LLC and it's a nightmare. So it is a very slow process, but I mean, so it depends on which way the city goes. It depends on how bad the violations are. But I mean, I would say in my tenure as a city attorney, the ongoing issue is a lot of times the owners of these properties are these shell companies that don't have any assets that we can use to squeeze them. I mean, I can take these companies in front of a judge and show cause them for contempt, but you know, it's like, what is it, you know, the judge can order? I've gotten tons of orders that say they have to demo the property or advance the city the money. But if they don't have any assets, I mean, where do we go from there? I mean, they offer to transfer the property to the city, but certainly we don't want it because we don't want to be on the hook for cleanup or abating any nuisances on there. And it's the same problem with the rental registration ordinances. You know, we have these, whether it's commercial or residential, these companies that own these properties, and that's all that they hold. And so trying to squeeze them to comply is difficult.
You know, last week, my family was here from Virginia, and my daughter told me one morning, she said, "Mom, there's some animals going in your garbage." And I said, "No, animals in my garbage can." I had landscape things out there that I was fixing to put out, so they had climbed up on there. So they had left, and I'm thinking that she was just seeing something and thinking differently. I go out and throw some stuff I had clipped off some of my bushes off in there, and what's it up in there looking up at me? A raccoon. So as I'm over there screaming and hollering and losing my religion, the guy from across the street came over to see what was the matter. And there is the raccoon. He said, "That's the same one that I saw running across the street." I'm not gonna continue. Something's gonna happen.
So I want to jump real quick back to that fee, because you were saying you weren't impressed by the $480 a year that someone would have to pay at $40 a month for the privilege of having a vacant or abandoned structure. That's how I read this ordinance, is that if you want the privilege of holding on to real estate in this town and not doing anything with it, like the house across from you, like so many others, there's a fee for that. A lot of, I think, I can't say for certain what anyone's doing with their real estate, but a lot of these folks are waiting for Albion's housing market to do really well, and then they have something they can sell. And so they're waiting for.
That's just it. Keep the house up to par.
Well, right, but I think a lot of the times, like Mr. Harkness was saying, I think people aren't buying individual houses when they do this. I think they're buying companies that own thousands. I think whoever owns the house across from you probably owns a 4-digit number of houses somewhere, if I had to guess. I could be really wrong about that. It could be a smaller operation. But the reason I bring that up is that if they're waiting for a return on investment, this makes that calculation different for them. It says if you're going to have it vacant for more than 25 months, you need every inspection before you take occupancy again. Or in the case of residential, I think it's even fewer than that. So it's something that really, it puts up more barriers. And I think it helps us create the paper trail that would be needed to eventually take something to court and force a property owner truly in dereliction of duty to take action and correct the violations, whether that's through a demolition or through putting it in the hands of somebody who will actually take care of it. But I see a lot of benefit in this. Again, I've not gone through this whole thing and seen how it works. That would take some time, and I'd really want to dive into. I mean, I'd want to watch Battle Creek do this. I want to see start to finish what this does to a property before I'd recommend us passing it or not. But right off the bat, I think something that imposes fees on a property owner every month that they don't occupy that building. I think that I don't know if it solves our problem, but I think it helps.
So with this, one from Battle Creek, have they implemented this yet? Or
Yeah.
is this
This has been on the books since 2016, I think.
2016?
Yeah.
Ms.
But
Mayor,
in addition to the monthly fee, there's also a penalty. So failure to comply to outline in this ordinance, it's $100 per day until they rectify the issues or.
And that's if they're in violation, if they don't register with us, if they want to continue ignoring us, right?
Ms. Mayor.
Yep.
So I'm in favor of the concept of a vacant structure registration. The problem is always going to be enforcement for these like I said, the properties that are held by companies that are either not domestic or don't have any assets. And I just use Dalrymple as the prime example because everyone's familiar with that one. I mean, that one was held by a company based out of Virginia. And it was a hollow LLC, and the only thing they owned was Dalrymple. Now we could tell them, hey, you need to register this, and we can assess them a penalty, and we can do whatever we need, keep assessing it. But any lawyer will tell you, I mean, even if we sue them, a judgment is great, but it's just a piece of paper unless there's something to collect. And the problem with properties like that is we can assess them until we're blue in the face, but it's like trying to get blood out of a stone. I mean, for an ordinance like this, we can't put it on the taxes. And even if we did put it on the taxes, they just let it tax revert to the city. I mean, the only reason we were able to get that particular property cleaned up was because the land bank was able to work with us. That's where we that's kind of the fly in the ointment for vacant property registration. Is you get these properties that's all that these companies have. And so they're not going to pay the fine. They're not going to clean up the property. They're either going to let the property tax revert, or they'll deed it to somebody else, or, and round we go. And unfortunately, the unfortunate part of it is it's legal for them to do that. Now, I mean, there's things that we can do to make it extremely difficult for them, but properties like Dalrymple and properties like, similar to that, I mean, we're not going to see $1 from those kinds of properties. I mean, Dalrymple, people bought, or, actually, it's another great example is Union Steel. That property traded hands at least 3 or 4 times. And you had people, I think those of you who were on council at the time, we had one owner that bought it for like $500 just for this, just for the purpose of going in and cutting all the metal out to sell scrap metal for
And
like,
that caught fire
and it caught fire and
during a planning session of the city council.
right. And then he turned around and deeded it to somebody else as soon as all the usable or sellable metal was out of it. So I just want council to be aware. I mean, I like the concept of a vacant building registration, and it will work in certain scenarios, but in the instances where we have properties that are held by these shell companies, particularly the out-of-state ones, I just want you to be aware of the reality of collecting these fines is virtually impossible.
Councilman French?
How hard is it to identify the true owner of properties, whether it's a company in California or China or, wherever? Is that something that's doable?
Yeah,
Because-
we can always just look through the register of deeds and they'll have who owns it. Now, I mean, if it's an LLC, but where it gets
Right,
tricky.
What I'm getting at, Colin, if you let me finish, is if we publish that list, identify individuals associated with the LLCs, identify where they are, you know, so you make that public knowledge. And then that then creates enough of negative, I mean, we can do it as obnoxiously as we want to. We can put it on our website. Here's the list of delinquent property owners and their locations. And see if it makes them uncomfortable. Because maybe they would give it up to someone in town who might be able to turn it into, with the blue plant coming, into something, be willing to invest locally in housing that we're gonna need moving forward, whether it's demolition and building something new or putting a double wide on it or whatever it is. Because it's the same problem we have with downtown. Until local people took possession of the downtown, we were enslaved by people in California who had bought up blocks of downtown and let them sit empty and rot. And so I think we could probably try the same kind of operation, and even if we get one, it's a win, right? So if Chestnut is not so bad that it could be renovated, but we've got some guy in California who refuses, and we can go ahead and do the things that we're doing, whether we collect a dime or not, we're sending him letters and his attorney's letters, and we're bringing the full weight of our authority on that person. And then we say, oh, by the way, there's a guy who's willing to give you $5,000 for that property, and we'll stop bothering you. Would he take it?
To pay off your tax and your bills before you can sell, because there's a lien hold on the property.
Yes, but who holds that lien? We do.
Yeah.
So one way that blighted houses that have had these liens on them get done is that we as a city, who haven't collected them for years, just waives the lien.
Well, you have to keep in mind here, you're only allowed to lien properties for certain things. And vacant property registration is not going to be one of them. Like, you can lien them for weed abatement, you can lien them for water and sewer, things like that. But unless the state law specifically allows you to lien them, you can't just lien them for non-compliance with other ordinances that we create. There's only a finite list of things we can slap a city lien on a property for.
Cool.
But what about outstanding bills, like you were saying?
Only certain bills, water, sewer, under the Revenue Bond Act, they can be liens on the property. Nuisance abatement, they can be a lien on the property and transfer the taxes. Rental registration is not going to be one, or excuse me, vacant property registration is not going to be one that is going to be a lien or be able to be transferred.
What if everything's been cut off? There's no water, there's no lights, there's no anything.
I'm not sure I follow you.
They don't.
And there are no liens.
But that means that doesn't have thing from the side of the house. Everything that you would have to run a house with, like water.
When he's saying that at that point, we have no leverage.
What?
We have no leverage because they're not due any bills because you don't have water, they don't have electrical. They don't have to pay because there's
Okay.
no use.
Well, and you know, like with certain properties, I mean, if the city has to go out and keep mowing the lawn, those will keep getting put onto the taxes eventually when we do that. I think we do, Haley, correct me if I'm wrong, we do that annually, I believe.
Yes, before summer property taxes.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So they'll transfer the taxes, and if they're not paying their taxes, it'll tax revert to the county eventually. I mean, the good thing is, like, by way, just to use Councilwoman Reed's example, I mean, the good thing is every once in a while we'll have a property like 307 Chestnut that actually is held by a parent company that actually has assets. And so in that particular instance, they're set for a contempt hearing next month. So that one is one where we can squeeze and get some compliance. But the problem is, you know, like with these companies that are set up as LLCs, the whole idea of an LLC is that the company is a separate entity from the people that are the quote unquote members of the company. And so unless they're commingling funds or assets, you can't go after the individual members. You can only go after the LLC. And I mean, that's the whole point of an LLC. And so, you know, the question becomes, all right, you have a rundown house that's vacant that needs to be cleaned up, and it's held by one of these shell LLCs that has no other assets, so we can fine it, we can sue them. But, you know, like I said, we can get a judgment, but getting them to act on the judgment or trying to extract money from a company that doesn't have any assets is, I mean, it's like I said, it's trying to get blood out of a stone. They'll just let the property tax revert. I mean, we can, you know, just like what happened with Dalrymple School. I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer here, but I want council to understand the reality of how these properties are, you know, being handled by these companies.
And I'll just throw in also, I think with these companies that we've been talking about for a while, we're talking about a specific subset. And that's not everyone that's going to be affected by this. So it will move the needle. How exactly, where exactly, that's why I want to talk more to Battle Creek and see what they're doing. How this has looked since, you know, what the changes they've observed in the last 8 years have been. But no, I definitely not bringing this in front of you saying that it's gonna be able to solve our issues, but I think with our rental registration and our vacant property registration, we start to hit pay dirt there. I mean, we start to really box in our problem. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know what to tell you for a broader reach than this right now. Yeah, I'd love to continue looking into this. I think there's a lot of value that this has for the city.
Do you have, anybody have questions for Director Arnold before we start looking at individual precinct concerns? All right. Well, can you do the homework and
Yeah.
we'll come back to this another time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He asked a question. The house that's on Eden Street next to the church, John 3:16. That's falling in.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do. Like 3 up from the, yeah, I know where you're at.
What about that house?
As far as this ordinance or just in general?
In general?
I've not looked at,
Still standing. I mean, is it owned by LLC too?
I don't believe so. I was just looking at it this week on the map, but I wasn't looking at its file. I can give you an update on that one. I don't know. I don't think I've had any dealings with that property in particular. I know the one you're talking about, and I can give you an update kind of on where it stands and what some enforcement might look like for trying to get, I think there's a hole in the roof. I think there's maybe not too much roof.
That fall in like this.
Gotcha.
Front porch. Yeah.
I guess in that ride,
Councilwoman Reed, do you know the address?
I wrote it down, but no, I don't have it.
Well, it's 2 house, I mean, it's the second house just before the Albion Community Foundation.
Yes.
That's the one that we were dealing with Habitat. They had said they would give them that house to get started, and that never took place. So
So if it's, is it in which direction? Because the community foundation's 1002.
It's the 900 block.
Yeah. This is really-
and then the next one is a church, and then there's the next house after that.
Or
That house,
814,
the house, that sounds more like it. That house about ready to cave in anytime.
just next to the church, right?
Used to be the old barber shop.
I can email council an update on just where that one is as like a cross section of the process here.
I mean, it's places, when I asked before to take a ride around the city, it was to look at places like that, that takes away from the neighborhoods, takes away from the city looking its best. And those are the type of things I was talking about. Why can't we find something to do something about it? Because if you look right across to the square,
The what?
where across the street, down, I think it is,
Well, you, the corner of Arthur and Eaton Street,
but
the corner of Arthur and Eaton Street.
no, I'm talking about up in there.
Oh, okay, because that house right there, they're starting to move out, I hope.
It was
I
the
see.
parents that used to live there. The mom and the dad died, it's kids on that, uh. Mobile home like thing sitting on the side.
Oh, I know you're talking about, you talking about the Hurons.
Yeah, but
Here, yeah.
it's gonna start.
Yeah, that's awful. I can't believe they let that house go down. That's terrible.
So
So
we starting at precinct 2 then?
I'm just wondering why
Okay,
can't,
just start, I just believe
something
down,
be done.
like I said, Eden Street should
To
be taken
encourage
care of.
these people, you know, to stop the house and get to that point to where it makes their neighborhood.
Yeah, Eden Street and going down Superior, I'm just keen on that. And that's what we should be. I'm sorry for jumping.
No, it's good.
That, I mean, I want all of our precincts to be taken care of, but I'm just gun ho. That if I say I care this much about Albion, when you get off of 121, and when you get off of 124, and when you bring yourself from Marshall to Marshall, coming down Austin Avenue, those are the streets that should be looking. That's where I'm at. What can we do to get those taken care of? The precincts, we already have our code enforcer doing the best that he can to do that, okay? And we know we have other things that's in the inside that needs to be taken care of for of our elderly people and our children that gotta be taken care of. We know that. But those streets right there, that's where we should be setting some goals to take care of.
Councilman French.
Those are both considered major streets though, right?
Entryways,
What was that?
entryways.
Yeah. So they would be major streets.
Yep.
So again, we're gonna be having the same argument or conversation about which do we prioritize? Are we can we do both? We can get grants for major street renovations. We can't get grants for local street renovations. So,
Can we get grants for entryways? Remember?
yeah, they're considered, yeah,
We had something going on about creating something about the entryways. I
Yep.
can't remember exactly.
yeah, back when we had a French intern and remember we had those signs we were gonna redesign and all that. Yeah. I'm just saying, as we as a council are talking about our goals for our precincts, I mean, I agree, entryways need to be a priority. So if we want to give our city folks those two, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Eden Street and Austin Avenue definitely need help. Yeah. As opposed to Michigan Avenue and
Yes,
Superior.
and what is it, Haven or whatever, what's the
it's still Superior, the word is
Yeah.
Superior, Michigan,
Mhm.
Eaton Street. It's still the same.
right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just to me,
But in terms of
going
road,
round and round, that's just, should be it.
right? So are we talking about roads? Are we talking about properties? Are we talking about both?
Talk about both. I mean,
Yeah,
she's gonna tell us I'm quite sure she'll tell us what she can get done with the roads, what she has to do and ask us that question again. But I want to know what Ian's standing right here. What can we do with these homes and what can we do with these buildings? Because that is you. And I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, you know what I'm saying? I just
Right.
believe that.
Can just weigh in for, I think the reality is. The reason the properties are in the condition that they are, if I would say the property owner had the means. To do the proper upkeep and make sure that their home is. Meeting all requirements, we would not be dealing with this.
that's right.
I think we discussed this on the city tour. We know a lot of families who were the original property owners, they may have passed on. And now it falls on their children to own and maintain, and they may not have the means, or they may not have the interest, or don't know what to do with it. So I think it's important to then partner with organizations to connect residents who own properties with available programs, resources to help. But then the reality, a lot of those programs require you to be up to date in your property taxes, up to date on a lot of other things that also prohibits people from taking advantage of that opportunity. I know we've done a great job in partnering with Neighborhoods Inc. I know our EDC, they're working to identify different other resources to assist homeowners to make the proper improvements to their homes. But I think that's a big hurdle that we're gonna have to get over. I think if people had the means to do what is needed, a lot of our properties would not be looking the way that they are. I can just reflect back to, I grew up here, and I can say that I do see a decline in a lot of our neighborhoods, and I think that just comes with the times. I mean, the cost of living right now is the highest I think it's ever been. So that we're really gonna have to rely not only coming up with other tools here at the city, but really partnering with other organizations who can assist our residents with those other opportunities.
To an extent, I don't have any silver bullets fresh out. We have to do a lot, and we have to do it consistently. We have to do it over the course of several years. So like to get that consistency over the course of several years, the problems that we have settled in over the course of their own period of several years. So again, I want to say, I think this moves the needle and is worth looking into in the same way that our rental registration ordinance will move the needle and was worth looking into. Each individual property is unique, and what you're dealing with when you speak to the owner is unique every time. We have owners that they get the notices from us and they completely understand, and they're like, I can't believe I let it get this bad. Let's fix it up. And then we have owners that call us confused in the first place that we have these laws on the books, which is always a part of the conversation that we have to have with them, because I try and really inform residents of their responsibilities and what expectations we will put on them. We could abate or order abated all of the property issues. Like, and I guess I don't want this to sound flippant, because I don't really mean it that way. We could spend some serious time reallocating some resources, and what Mr. May and I do with our days, and start some door-to-door enforcement, top to bottom, and really write people up for some issues that are long-standing: tarps on roofs, chipped paint. That's our responsibility, is to enforce that ordinance. I can tell you that if we start to do that with that level of focus, if we make that our priority, not some of the ordinance development and working with people and trying to find and assemble those resources. Like, we still have some ongoing conversations with the USDA that I'll tell you have mostly stalled in the last few months from the good work we had. Trying to get homeowners connected to grants and loans. We would really force out a lot of residents. And I think we would be within our right, certainly within our obligation as city government to do that. But I think that's just the wrong approach. Like, I'm trying to find more carrot than stick here as we work with our residents, trying to be understanding of the fact that most people don't have $15,000 for a brand new roof. And so if we write them up and say, please replace your roof as is required by law, they're not going to be able to do it. So I'm trying to connect residents of that. And we don't look at whether or not someone can do it as means for enforcement. We're just trying to find alternative approaches rather than spending the whole 40 hours in a week writing up violations, because we truly could spend 40 hours a week door to door writing people up. But I don't think that's the best use of our time. And I think that just puts us on the back foot with our residents. When I think we are all on the same page, us here and with our residents, about how the town should look.
So do we have areas within our precinct? I know because Jackson would like to prioritize the entryways. By specific areas within our precincts. That's kind of why we also are here to look at them and then prioritize. What are we going to focus on? Councilman French.
Because I got the personal touch and wasn't part of any of the larger conversations, my projects are more related to things like roads rather than properties, because I think precinct 6 probably in the best shape of most precincts in terms of housing stock. Erie Street was resurfaced in 2010 or 12, I think. And the center line of East Erie Street is decaying. And so, and patches have happened, but I'm wondering if we could do something better with that. Scott Kipp, 13 years ago, came up with me, a Linden Avenue solution that I talked to Ian about, that's connected to dam removal and the conversion of the mill race into a road. It solves the problem of the mill race and getting the dam out. We get a bridge knocked down on Erie Street. It's also in poor shape. But it also then provides access to Linden Avenue residents to have a fully two-laned road. It fixes the problems that Linden Avenue has with resurfacing, being a dead-end street. We can think about a way of connecting that to Wilson Street, or creating a road all the way through the millage race all the way to Hannah Street. And so that's a project that's a lot of planning. And as we think about dam removal, make a decision about dam removal, what becomes of the mill race becomes obviously the next thing. So I'd like that, since we are talking about it, since we have $1 million to do planning, I'd like that to be a priority. Because I think it ties in with a bunch of other things that we're doing in the city. And if we do it all together, even if we don't have the $4, $6, whatever $1 million yet to do that, we have a plan in place. So when money is available to do that, we go. Rather than going, oh, we should have done that when we took the dams out. That's right. Make the project something, and that's really it for my precinct. I mean, there are some houses that obviously need some help. Porter Street, for example, comes to mind, but and surfacing on that street also could use some help too. But I know that precincts 1, 2, and 3 have much bigger problems to deal with, especially with roads. So I defer that. That's my big project, is the mill race, just because it's going to get a dam.
Precinct 2.
I'd like to see some of the vacant lots around here. I don't know who is on. Maybe the land, and in fact, I did talk to the land. We were having a conversation about some of the lots needing to be cleaned up. What's happening in Marshall, you're gonna have people looking for housing and places to build houses, put houses or whatever. And there's vacant land, because right down from where I am, I think there's 1, 2, 3, it's either 2 or 3 lots down there. But it's got growth, trees, bushes, stuff like that. And where if that was cleaned up, this is what I was saying, if that was cleaned up so people could see it, they would probably want to put a house there. If some of the people in the neighborhood on that street would clean up their property and build it nice. But up across from the water tower, there at the corner of Chestnut and Clinton, a tree branch had fell down, and that was land bank property. And so they were cutting around the branch, and grass is just growing up all around the branch. So the grass is cut here, but all of this is, I don't know if the city moved it or if the land bank, because I told them they really needed to move that. Since I'm on the land bank, I can talk about it. And that they needed to move that branch so that that lot could be cleaned off, people could see it, because it's for sale, you know. And so I'm just thinking that there's there's other lots and things around here that's like that. The lot right behind me, between my house and where Mary Lou used to live, the lady does not live in Albion, lives in Val Creek, that owns it, it's her daughter's. In the storm, half of a tree fell down. And so now they cut around it, and that half a tree is there that needs to be cut off, moved out, and the grass cut. Because pretty soon you can have groundhogs and living under that too. So hopefully you will see if they will cut that off. So that, you know, but it looks bad. Part of the tree there, and then right out on the side of the street, I don't know if they put it there or if it fell off the tree and the city left it there, but it's a whole pile of shrub, like broke off tree limbs and stuff, just sitting there. if that's cleaned up, but that's an entrance way. Eaton Street coming down, you know. Right from Pine, right down from Pine, over on the left hand, right hand side. So that needs to be cleaned up. I think areas in our city that we see that's not just stuff laying around, if you clean it up, it's gonna look a whole lot nicer. People are gonna see it and, you know, it'll be better.
Councilwoman Muller?
Yes, thank you so much. I am on board with, Mayor Pro Tem Jackson about the entryways. And the reason why I say that, not only because of the statements that you have made, because they are valid points, but also because, I am looking at Bidwell Street. That is an entryway for college students and their parents. So when their parents drop them off at Wesley, the freshman dorm, they have to go down Bidwell. And Bidwell needs a lot of help. I'd like to see it beautified a little bit if we can get it. I'd like to find a way to get to the table with maybe the college and talk to them about it. I know that you two talk a lot with them about it. I have yet to make an appointment to talk to somebody about it. But if I can do that with y'all one day, that'll be great. But yeah, I'm waiting patiently. And so that's my talking point about the entryway over in precinct 4. And it may not be any of our business, but there is space behind Wesley that I was thinking about maybe proposing to them to maybe do a parking lot there, because the residents on Bidwell are older. Ambulance needs to get there sometime, and the road is really narrow. So if we could get the college students off the Bidwell and put them in a parking lot, that would make the residents so much happier.
Not supposed to be.
But those are just my 3 things that I have. I know that would make Mrs. Eldon really happy, so. Those are, and as far as vacant houses, I would love to see you come up with something, because we have a lot of vacant houses. They're not really messy in the yard or anything like that, but we do have a lot that are empty. And when I was out a couple weeks ago, I counted maybe about 15 to 20 houses in my precinct that are just empty. So I would love to see you do a vacant house ordinance.
So when you're talking about Bidwell Street, the actual road, yeah, not anything in regard to the properties.
Just maybe the roads, and if we could get maybe some paint, or how we can, find something for the homeowners to fix up some type of facade on the outside. You know, I don't want to get personal in their inside, that's somebody else's job, but to look at something, to see your kids are safe, that means a lot to college students and their parents.
And Mayor Pro Tem Jackson, do you have any areas of concern within your precinct?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. The contamination is still on that Dalrymple Street, that property out there. I don't know if you guys, I'm quite sure you already have done some testing. I need to know more about that, because they're really getting on me saying that, you're on council and you have these elderly people and you have the children right across the street, and no one, this property is still like it is. We need to do something for that property. And I was like, okay, that's valid. That's valid. I have to take it. And then the other thing, the sidewalks. I know there was a lady that had failed on the corner of Dalrymple Street and Erie, but it's closer coming up that way. And so that was turned in already. So Kevin O'Brien does know about it, but that's due to, the unlevelness of the sidewalk. And she was laying out there, and they went out there and got her. So they were getting on me about that, but also I have been going around anyway, because I know going up Cherry Street and down and around the area, some sidewalks that are like that. And if we can get those type of things taken care of, because we have many children, we don't want a child to be actually riding their bikes and hitting one of those and get thrown over. When we don't know, we do know some of that, and I just would like that to be taken care of everywhere, but definitely in those areas that I have seen and when I've rode with O'Brien to do that. And then also, as May's in here also, and you are, we talked about the fence ordinance. We need to get on that because that plays a part with everybody's precincts with the fence ordinance. And then Barnes Park, you know, all the other parks are looking good and everything. And I know what Legion has said they would do. That's moving very slowly. I know Kevin O'Brien is doing all that he can as well, you know, to stay in contact with them and make sure these things get taken care of. But the trees that are hanging in that park like that, we need to get that taken care of. I know we can get that done sooner than what we can. I think we can work a little harder with that. And then also the grass that's so high going out there to Oak Meadows on the left-hand side is awful. And I do know that that place is up for sale, okay? But we could get that grass is past the May thing, you know, we're in June going into July. So it's time for that grass to get cut. So I don't know what you guys need to do for that, but we're always fighting with the grass on that side of the road. And then the land that someone owns, as soon as you get past Erie Street before you get to the hospital, I call it the hospital, whatever, they need to cut that grass. And I know the individuals that just bought the land beside that, he's cutting his grass more often than anybody's cutting his grass now, right? And then what used to be the old hospital, that grass does not get cut at all. So that one gentleman that rides up and down the street with his riding lawnmower, I hope no one ever touches him, because he'll go and he cuts the grass on the side so people can actually walk. You know, because I know before, when the other person was a council person, they would get mad at him and say, the city, you know, don't want you cutting the grass because, you know, and they would try to cut the park. But we have individuals trying to help us, but I don't see us doing a real good job of keeping that. And as we all know, the roads are awful. So, but like I said, I know it's something you have to take care of. So, and one more thing, before, in my precinct, I like it to be done in everybody's precinct before we have another bad storm. If we could go out and evaluate these dead trees that are actually hanging on top of wires, so that we can have consumers get in here quickly and get that cut down. And I know they would do it if we let them know. So we can help our residents before we get to this time of this bad storms, because we're about to have some more bad storms come. But we can get ahead of that by just going down and evaluating some of the areas, because we have some dead, you know, the trees that they are yet standing, but we have dead branches hanging over wires that our people should not be taking care of. Consumers should be taken care of. So if we can do some more of that, that can help us before we have to deal with our residents getting on us about why this, and you guys could have did some things we can be a little bit more proactive about. And those are my concerns. And you know, the rest of them, I'm not going to get them anyway, but because some of those houses and some of the stuff that you probably already try to take care of, it's awful. I did see some of those trailer homes move next door from the Holtz are gone. There's only one left over there. So now I'm quite sure you don't think it's that, I see people talk, right? So now I know you don't think it's that swimming pool over there that stinks, okay? You know where that stuff was coming from. It was coming from out of those trailers, out of those motor homes. That's what I was trying to tell you guys. But anyway, so one of them is gone. There's another one that's yet still there in that area. So, yeah. Thank you.
So you gave us a long list. So to start with the Dalrymple site, the contaminated site, the site testing has been done. I believe there's been a phase 1, phase 2. That's why we have this the signs there. We've identified the level or what contamination is on that property. The signs were put up there because we did have residents, and then there was a path created because we had residents going through there. We cannot, based on the level of contamination, we cannot disturb the ground. That's why the signs are up there. That's why it is not mowed, because if you mow, you are disturbing the ground and you're putting those contaminants into the air. It's hard to determine an exact cost to remediate it because it all depends on the level of development you want to bring onto the site. So until we have identified a developer or until we have identified a project or something that we know will go on this property, it's hard to determine what the cost will be. I can say if we're looking to bring new housing, that is probably the most costly. Because since there is contamination, there are even more requirements that are needed to make sure that none of those contaminations are going into the homes or to the properties that are being built. That goes for any of our vacant properties that we know have contamination. Until we know what development will be going onto that site, it's hard to determine a path to remediation because there's a lot of factors that play into that. The sidewalks, I think we need to review the sidewalk ordinance and come up with a proper plan. I know the city had a previous assessment to deal with sidewalks. That was before my time with the city. Attorney Harkness, I would think we can say that that assessment was not proper. So we did look to move away from that, to utilize those funds to make improvements to all of the ramps. So we'll need to identify a new method to address the sidewalks. If I understand that correctly, it does fall on the property owner to maintain the sidewalks in front of their homes. So if that is going to fall on the city, we'll have to figure out what that looks like or what's a process that we can do to address that.
Yeah, some of you were on council when we previously addressed the sidewalk assessment. Some of you weren't, but I mean, I was of the opinion, I don't think that was done properly when it was instituted. It was done before my tenure. But the way that I think realistically it should have worked is there should have been special assessment districts set up in areas to address the sidewalks. You know, that's probably the way it should have been done, but I can tell you it's probably something that is going to be unpopular, but it's necessary. I mean, the idea with the special assessment district is you're charging the people that are directly affected by the improvement. So if you have a series of 3 houses that are having the sidewalk replaced in front of those 3 houses, they bear the brunt, that they bear the entirety of the expense of the assessment. And so that's why I say it's going to be unpopular, because it, you know, everybody knows concrete work is not cheap. It's expensive, but I mean, it's not just Albion where this happens. I mean, Meridian Township, where I live, did a sidewalk assessment in front of my house, and I had to pay for sections of the sidewalk to be replaced. I mean, it just is what it is. But I think moving forward, if we address the sidewalks, we do it by special assessments.
I can share what Councilmember Williams provided. So similar to other comments, tree branches and brushes, he would like to see that the ones that cover the street are hanging over, that those be addressed. And if you are aware of trees that are in the lines, as Mayor Pro Tem Jackson said, yes, our crew cannot go in and remove those. We have to contact consumers. But if you are made aware, contact either Bonnie or Director O'Brien. We'll make sure that we can pass those on to consumers to have them addressed. We did just sign a new tree service contract, so we can hopefully we'll start to see more tree work begin within next month. And then he also wanted to add that street sweeping, since we did have the sweeper out, it has vastly improved the look along the roadway. So and then everything else, I believe we've already covered in prior discussions. So I think I would take from that to keep moving forward with having the street sweeper. And since we were able to sweep the entire community twice, we saved on what you guys approved for this first contract. So we have it through 6 months. So I'm talking with Director O'Brien. We're going to bring it back out right before the fall. All the leaves start to fall down, clean the streets again before the winter months.
Great.
People were very happy. I want all the street sweepers coming down my street.
That's what Director O'Brien said. They literally would come outside of their house, stop the people in there and just thank them that they were out sweeping the streets. So I think that was a good choice and I'm happy, looking forward to having another round of it here in the fall before the winter months.
Yes, Mayor Protem Jackson.
Just one question, the lead abatement, is that what it's called? When they go around with the lead, people have lead in their home. Is that one of our top priorities, our goals
For the lead and copper, the water main, yes, that is.
for the, but I'm talking about for the homes, is
All
that?
the lead work on the equipment.
Yes,
That's not done by us, that's community.
yeah, but is it one of, I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. No, I apologize. Is it one of our goals as the council? Was that put in our goals
I don't,
to get that done? I
excuse me,
mean,
I don't believe so.
I don't either. I guess where I'm coming from with that, we start to spend a lot of time, we know residents are calling in for that and we're trying to get grants and all the kind of stuff to get those things done. But if that's not like one of our top goals, that's not where we should be at. That's just my fault.
It has
That's
not
my
been,
fault. That's just my thought.
it hasn't been an official goal of the council, but I can say, I know myself, Director Arnold, we've connected with Shauna Gamble, who serves as the lead grant coordinator for city of Battle Creek in the county. She's provided us all the information. We are encourage people to stop in. We will connect them through that program to have them their homes assessed or help them remediate some of that. So
Okay.
although it's not been a prioritized, identified by council, we are working to make sure that residents and families are connected with the resources out there
Okay.
to address that.
I should say this for clarity. That doesn't cost us anything.
Mhm.
We see it happening, they get their permits, we see the house get completed, they pass their inspections for happening.
Okay.
We mostly share data, back and forth, so we're trying to have more meetings about that up there. There's a lead task force. I don't think they, well, I hope they haven't met in a while, because I haven't gotten a meeting invite in a while, but I think they'll be reconvening.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that we use some, resources to help these main interest ways is what I'm saying. So, yeah.
All right, any other items that we'd like to bring forth? All right, so I have a motion to adjourn.
So, both.
Just, I'm sorry, just a couple of announcements before we are adjourning. Just a reminder to everybody, we will be closed next Tuesday, July 4th for the 4th of July holiday. It's hard to believe it's already that time of the year. And then we just received word that the Haven Road Bridge will be closed tomorrow for resurfacing, starting at 6:30 a.m. until 6:30 p.m. That road project is, I think, on wrapping up. So if you know people who go that way, let them know that the bridge will be closed tomorrow for resurfacing.
What time?
6:30 a.m. until 6:30 p.m.
You know why I'm saying that?
Yeah,
We'll be out
Go
there,
that way?
because they'll be out there playing and that parents come out there,
Oh.
so, okay, 6:38 until, okay.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I don't think, you did- I'm sorry, I think you skipped public comment.
Oh, we don't have public here.
I know, I'm just, to be OMA compliant, just regardless, just offer the opportunity, just so that.
You're calling.
Oh, for the public comments.
Yep.
Public comment?
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Support. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned 7:08 p.m. Everyone have a good day.